Construction is absolutely chock full of confrontation. It's almost the job. We yell in the industry because it gets results, right?
When you find yourself screaming at somebody, what can we do to de-escalate ourselves?
Everybody hears the word confrontation and they automatically assume it's going to be bad. It doesn't have to be bad. We think confrontation is bad, so we avoid the confrontation. We avoid it until we can't avoid it anymore. Something blows up, then we confront badly. We have bad feelings, and then we think confrontation is bad. And we go through this cycle almost.
The longer you wait to confront, the harder and more dirty it can get. Hey, what's up, guys? Today, we are talking to Dr. Noland White. He is a professor of psychology over here at GCSU, right down the street from us here in sunny Milledgeville, Georgia. He's also a friend of mine that I actually met at church, and we had a couple good conversations, and I was like, dude, this guy's got some stuff to say that could be really relevant to us as an industry. In addition to being a licensed psychologist and professor here at GCSU, he has co-authored many books on psychology for college and high school. We have a pretty wide range of things that we talk about with Noland, but specifically we wanted to talk about conflict resolution. And I really think he's got some good nuggets for us to take onto all of our job sites this week. As you might have guessed, today's conversation touches on mental health. We really hope that you guys find these insights to be helpful for you, but we want to be clear. Today's conversation is for educational purposes only. If you're experiencing any symptoms of anxiety or depression, please speak to a medical professional. This is a good one, guys. Let's dive in.
There was one interview I did where he goes, I'll ask you a question you probably don't want to answer on while we're recording. I'm going to ask you anyway. And I called them after. I said, yeah, that's got to go.
Yeah.
We cannot have that there.
Yeah.
So that cannot go forward ever.
There are videos like that
Totally get it.
with me and them out there, and Tyler just keeps them in a file for some reason. I don't know why.
It's blackmail.
They live in a file somewhere. I don't know when they're going to come out, but
It's going to be great assets one day.
yeah. And it's going to be grand. Can't wait. Can't wait for my kids to see that.
That's right. Exactly.
Oh, you're welcome. Do you know,
Right,
I'm just holding them back, baby. I'm just waiting.
I finally kicked the bucket at the funeral. All right,
Oh, no,
everybody.
that's it. It's
Get
just
the
There's
real
a
one.
celebration.
yeah,
There's
the
a
celebration of his idiocy. No.
The real Eddie. Y'all didn't know him, but I want you to before you go.
I hope you know that if that untimely demise did in fact happen, when it does happen, I am going to have a roast. That is what's going to happen.
I'd be okay with that. I'm down with a fun funeral. Why not? I mean, it ain't going to fix the dead. So.
That's right. It's true.
We're going to weekend at Bernie's this thing, put
Oh
you
my
up in a
gosh.
chair and
Oh,
everything.
this is
It's
a
going
little
to
too
be
far there. A little too far.
Jeez. All right. Well, good Lord. I don't know if that's a good intro or not, but whatever. Noland, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for allowing me to be here.
So, yeah, man. So we know each other from church.
Yep.
But you were also a professor over here at GCSU.
Yep.
And we kind of got to talking. And I really wanted to get you on the show because I felt like you might have some really cool insights to share kind of in our construction community after some of our chats. So share what you do. Like, who are you and what do you do?
First off, I question your judgment, but but besides that,
I do too.
yeah,
All the time.
All the time.
I've been at Georgia College teaching since 2001,
Yeah.
and it's been pretty special because I was there as an undergrad my last 2 years, and then we used to have a master's program, and I got my master's there,
Okay.
and so, but been teaching a long time. Over the years, I pursued my license.
Mm-hmm.
Most of my work in town has been like at the state hospital when it was
Yeah.
much more vibrant. Local prisons, the local YDC. Then years ago, I used to do stuff called like adventure therapy, doing ropes courses, So, but the last most recent years is primarily focused on education, teaching, and just focused on research.
Yeah. Ropes courses are such an interesting thing. I'm sorry. I'm just kind of curious. Like, The theory behind that is to build more like team relationships, right? Is that kind of it?
That's
like,
one thing. If you think about another aspect too, is like that. One of the mantras of the organization I was part of is like challenge by choice.
Yeah.
And so like there was a activity, an element called the pamper pole, where you basically climb to the top of, say, a 20, 25-foot vertical pole.
Yeah.
That's got, climbing pegs on it, and you're on a harness, you're on belay, and your task is to get to the top of it, stand on top, and then leap to a trapeze.
Okay.
And, many people get worked up because of heights, and they think, well, I'm never going to catch it. Well, I don't care if you catch it or not. I care that you tried to catch it.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of thing, is somebody having either success or being able to talk about, well, did it work for you or did it not? And just kind of getting out of your head a little bit and dealing with, what was your experience? No, you actually did it or you didn't do it. And then when you're doing team building things, it's like, no, so how did it work? Try to do that yourself. Or how did it work trying to direct the entire group to do what you wanted them to do? You know? And maybe that didn't work. Yeah. And sometimes you have to sit back and let somebody else take the lead.
Maybe we ought to do like a YouTube video where we try to do a ropes course together. I'm sure that would be entertaining.
Hey, there's some great folks that are now facilitating. I'm a little bit biased, but they do some great work over there.
Is that is that here in town? Where
they have.
Okay.
Yeah, the college still has ropes course. So there's some great people out there doing work.
So your whole study though, and your like everything that you do is psychology, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So like what facets of psychology are you currently like studying and teaching on and researching?
My classes, I teach from first year students to senior level students. I teach classes in introductory psychology, psychology of adjustment, which is essentially how do we cope with life challenges, trying to take the science of psychology and make it even more applied to day-to-day life. I teach behavioral neuroscience, which is the brain and behavior. And then I teach upper level courses in counseling and clinical psychology. Yeah. And just created a new seminar on intimate relationships. Okay. So for the first time, my lab, we do research on ADHD in adults. I bring people in and I record the electrical activity of their brain while they do tests of attention and working memory, which many adults with ADHD are not good at.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
And so we're looking at their activity, again, seeing what's going on in their brain while they're doing things.
Yeah. So there's no reason. It's chaos. It's utter freaking chaos in there. Yeah. No, we started talking about that and I was like, dude, just stop asking questions. All right. I'm sure you get this all the time. Like, it's like, just bring you on the show and just talk about ADHD the whole time because I got so many questions I need to know. Yeah. It's ridiculous. But really the aspect that we wanted to bring you on to talk about was the challenging parts of life. I feel like in construction, I know in construction, there are just so many times where things get really, really freaking hard. It gets really tense in the room, especially job trailers. Everybody's around a table or, heck, on a Zoom meeting or an email or whatever. There are a lot of situations that things get heated, things kind of escalate and stuff. And so I kind of wanted to talk through some of that, and maybe some of the different practices that we can get in our own lives here. You know. So let's set up a situation, I guess. So. When somebody starts yelling at me, that's a pretty common one. Had that happen a time or two. What should our first response be to that? Like, what would be a healthy way to adapt to that environment?
Well, what I'm going to say is a heck of a lot easier to say than it is to do.
Fair enough.
And like a lot of things, it takes sometimes experience, sometimes it takes practice to be able to be better at conflict and also dealing with confrontation. Some people see every confrontation as, bad, but it's kind of like the term consequence. A consequence is an outcome. You can have confrontation, but it depends on what happens, whether it makes it good or bad. So hard as it is to do sometimes is do your best not to take it personally. But that's hard. Somebody's in your face. They're yelling at you. They're calling you every name under the book. If you can step aside and realize they're trying to communicate something that's not going well and try not to personalize it, then that's one thing I would say. Also, think about the situation. If you're in a place where you don't feel safe, the idea of psychological safety is that we have the ability that we can share our opinions, we can share our thoughts, and it doesn't make it, if they're good or bad, I'm going to be supported. So if you're already like in a heated meeting and things are getting amped up, maybe that's not the time to address it. Maybe step outside or take a break or something. But if somebody's yelling at you, realize that they're trying to communicate something and try not to personalize it right off. That's, I think, one of the first steps, but that's hard to do.
What kind of things are going on in our brain and our body that we're fighting and working against in that situation?
Yeah. I mean, depending on the experience, you could be having a full-out stress response where the first, a lot of research suggests that our first reaction is an alarm reaction, and then if you're looking at the brain, again, depending on the experience, you'll be looking at fight or flight response. And some people are going to gear up. Some people are going to try to run away. So it just depends on the individual. It depends on their experiences. Yeah. But you got that cascade of stress hormones and your heart rate gets up, you start getting that shortness of breath, kind of get that little waver in your voice and everything, then is that the time that you want to be sharing maybe something that's really important? Take a breather. There are some kind of easy to implement relaxation techniques you can use. Just there, focus on your breath for a minute and trying to get calmed down and get out of your head can be beneficial. You and I have talked before about breathing techniques. Whether it be something like box breathing or like that physiological sigh that Dr. Andrew Huberman shared in his podcast. But getting yourself calmed down and as much as possible, and then trying to have a conversation and sometimes even communicating to the person that I understand this is really important to you right now, but it's hard for me to listen to you when you're yelling at me.
Yeah.
So
talking about that, it's the sigh? Is that what you call it?
The physiological sigh.
Physiological sigh.
Yeah.
I've been using that more lately, and I would have to recommend it because I've found that it brings your levels down like crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Like your anxiety levels, just really quickly. Sing on stage over at church, as you know, right?
Yeah.
And so even this past week, I don't know why, I was just feeling a little bit more tense, and I practiced that. I just kind of sat down and did the full breath, and then snuck that little breath in there at the very end. And it's amazing how quickly that will just bring your anxiety, just kind of even that general shakiness, that kind of freaking out that can happen, how it just kind of will start to steady you.
They even put an article out, some research out where they compared that to box breathing and a couple other techniques and showed that how fast that it works. The idea is that you take in a full breath and you kind of sneak another breath in on top of it, and you have a full exhale through your mouth, try to empty your lungs, and you do that a few times, and it's amazing what it can do for you.
Yeah. Have you tried that yet? Have you seen that? Yeah.
I've tried and heard of box breathing.
Yeah.
But it's physiological sigh.
That one's a the box breathing technique is I've seen a lot of people even in construction talking about, hey, box breathing is, and that's a great technique, obviously. But this one's, so you go. And then it's that at the end. And then you let it out completely. And then I don't know how many times you want to do, like 3, 4.
I think his research, I think they did rotations of 3, but I'd have to check to be sure.
Yeah.
And it's like anything. I mean, it's a technique that can work even if you don't practice it, but it's going to work better if you practice it.
Yeah.
It's like the box breathing. I try to teach it to students. I'll try to do, basically, count off seconds, 4 seconds on each side of the box.
Yeah.
And I've asked them, to practice it, and I'll see them like go. I mean, their box is like 1.5 seconds, if even that long, So, but it does help a little bit if you practice.
Yeah.
So, but getting yourself calm, because again, especially if you're somebody that's kind of sensitive or predisposed to anxiety or something like that, or maybe you've got a hot temper, and you start to feel that kind of physiological reaction. Your body's gearing up, to either fight or flight. That's a clue for you. And if you can get control of that through that physiological side, box breathing. Another term in the literature right now is being mindful. Just kind of pulling yourself out, being very mindful. So like right now, my feet are touching the carpet. What does it feel like if my feet were actually touching the carpet to get grounded, to that? and just get really hyper-focused for a few minutes instead of going through all this cascade of what ifs and what's getting ready to happen and the anxiety, the fear, all those other responses. But if you can get a hold of your body, you'll probably get a hold of your mind too.
Yeah.
So,
is there any research that, like, I find myself almost holding my breath in situations where I'm like, there's some anxiety or there's some stress, right? Is that pretty common, or is that?
This morning, I was proctoring an exam for one of my classes.
Yeah.
And I tell them, I said, I'm going to watch you. And I promise you it's not from a creeper or stalker type of perspective. I want you to breathe, because some of you will quit breathing. You'll hold your breath, and it's almost like you start to vibrate. Then you go, and then you'll start breathing all over. I said, make sure you continue breathing. Yeah, some of us hold our breath,
Yeah.
And so
that's so interesting.
oxygen is important for us.
It is. It is kind of,
The brain actually likes it.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
From an old commercial. I'm not a physician, nor do I play one on TV. But oxygen is important.
It does help things for sure. No, I mean, I think it's very difficult even in a heated argument, which we've all experienced, I think, in construction, to be able to back away and to take those seconds. I think it's important to know, though, if you do get a second to disengage, what can you do in those moments to, like, okay, let's bring ourselves down here. Let's just take a beat. Like, let's focus on, like, hey, all right, let's focus on what our fingers feel, or like where our feet are at, or like what we smell or what we see. If we can learn and start to practice those things, we're going to handle the stressful situations so much more effectively.
I mean, I know there are people out there that just seem to kind of roll with things. But a lot of us need practice, and we need to be intentional, especially if you're working in a high stress environment.
Yeah.
If you're working in a place that that type of conflict could occur, I think you need to be able to practice, and I think you need to. For some people, it's role modeling. Some people, it's visualization, and so you're not going into it just doing it, but also, if possible, get some feedback from somebody. That old adage that practice makes perfect, that's not exactly true. If you're practicing incorrectly, all you're doing is learning how to do it wrong. Yeah. So getting some feedback and how efficient and how effective you are in that technique is sometimes going to be important. So get feedback from your peers, get feedback from your supervisors. How did I handle that situation? There's so many resources out there, and now with YouTube and podcasts and so many other different things that are out there, you can probably get some practice and information that will help you, get better at what you do.
Construction is absolutely chock full of confrontation. I mean, it's almost the job.
We almost pride ourselves in it.
Well, it is almost the job, because schedule and delivery and putting work in place to criteria, and like, this is what we do every day. And so if you're managing construction, part of what you do is come to people and confront them about deficiency or being late or whatever it is. So being confronted is one side of things, but how about on the other side of things? How can we help? Or how can we confront? Because I feel like we yell in the industry because it gets results, right? We yell because that in previous experiences has gotten them moving to get them off their butt. Let's go.
It induces fear.
Fear can work, right? Yeah. But I mean, I don't know that it works long term. I don't know that it doesn't build relationships. It doesn't bring people back to you. No. It burns bridges. So we know there's a better way. Yeah. But what can you add to that? How can we think about confrontation better when we have to do it?
Well, it's kind of like we said, there's so many different ways you could do it. You could pretend nothing's happening. You could avoid the individual. You could engage in some type of compromise, or you could collaborate. And if you're collaborating, you're probably going to be the most effective. And part of that is being able to communicate effectively. You don't call somebody a name or, address the behavior. Make things as concrete as possible, and do so in a way that's not putting value judgments or making either you on the offensive, them on the defensive, and make it as concrete and as objective as possible. And okay, this is obviously something that's not working for the two of us. I think we can get to a different place or a different outcome, So here's where I see we are. where do you see the situation? What would be a feasible or ideal solution for you? Here's what I think it is. Again, that takes a little bit of time, and it's not going to come out straight like that, but that's kind of like where you want to get at, because when people are so caught up in their emotions, or they're put on the defensive, or they're feeling like they're having to protect, or, there are some people that you get into confrontation, all they see is conflict that they have to win. And if you get to, again, past compromise and get to that collaborative aspect, I think you're probably more productive.
Yeah.
And that takes practice.
So practicing some active listening here. Let's say we got...
Well done.
Nice.
We got some guys up in a bucket, right? And they're not tying off.
Yep.
And so I've got to confront them about a safety concern I have as a superintendent. So I look up, I see them standing up in the bucket. They're not tied off. And I got a few things I can do. I could yell up, "Hey, dumb butt, get out of, quit doing what you're doing."
Yeah.
That's probably not helpful.
Yep.
I could, in practicing what you're saying, ask them to come down and come to them and say, "You need to be tied off. Why weren't you tied off?" And see if there's a reason why they felt the need to unlash so that they could try to get to work.
Yeah.
And then maybe try to find a way that they could get to the work safely.
And that's exactly, you're trying to find out why they're engaged in that behavior in the first place, instead of making an assumption.
Right.
Instead of making an assumption they're dumb, but their rationale might not be consistent with best practices or best safety, practices, but at least get an idea of where they were coming from. And then you talk about, okay, this is what you need to do, or here is another possible strategy to take.
Yeah.
So
you've given me 2 weeks to finish the work, and I can't do that if I do it the way you're asking me
exactly.
to. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm having to be unsafe here. Yeah.
I feel like I have to be unsafe.
Yeah.
Now I can apply something to that and say, well, how can we safely do the work then?
Yeah, you forced me to, it feels like you're forcing me to do this faster, and the only way I can do so, instead of reposition, I need to do this. And it's easier for me to reach over, unhook and reach over than it is to reposition. You know? So
I think so often we start accusing and we start the blame thing. I'm guilty of this so freaking much. I just start blaming things and just assuming they're just being a dumb butt for this reason. But ultimately, I think that's even in a time where let's get them to come down here, let's talk, but say here's why it's important too, of just a quick little refresher of guys, I'm just looking out for you. I want to make sure that you're going home at the end of the night.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's make sure that you're going home safe. All right. And I even think just coming to them with that level of just kind of hat in hand is kind of the way we've talked about it before, of just being listen, guys, I literally just want to make sure that you're safe. Right, that's it. I'm sorry. And is there anything else that I can do here? I think sometimes, and maybe this is unhealthy of me. I don't know. You can examine this. There's a lot of things unhealthy about me. He can attest to that. My wife. Anyway, so
multiple data sources.
Yes. Self-deprecation. It's a thing that I love to do. So I will approach somebody with a little bit of hey, I'm sorry. Maybe I'm just being stupid here. Maybe I'm just a moron, and just kind of bring it back here instead of coming to them and throwing it all in their face. Yeah.
Because again, if I did that to you, what are you going to do? Probably you're going to get defensive.
Oh, no, you're good.
Yeah.
No, you're man,
sorry.
What's up? What's up? How's it going? Yeah. So. And sometimes people have a hard time doing that. Me, I had 2 older brothers, so I'm kind of used to that. It's my wound.
You were the baby. Come on. What are you talking about?
I was trying to get the attention there.
Yeah, I'm playing into that.
Yep.
Yeah. Hey, and there is some research suggests that we learn to deal with confrontations and conflict through our families. There's some research to support that. So at least one line of research.
All right. Yeah.
There you go.
Yep, there it is. All right. Makes sense. Makes sense. All right. Moving on. I think, that kind of ties into de-escalating things. And confronting people is such a critical part of building anything. Their confrontations just happen all the time in our industry. They kind of have to, right? There's just a realignment that keeps having to happen every single day. So
it's not always huge either.
No.
Every time I have to go ask somebody when they're going to complete something, that's a small confrontation.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
And so that many times the stress of that amasses throughout the day. I've got 20 small confrontations throughout the day.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can either just grow numb to it, in which case I'm not really doing it all that well, or I can grow hypersensitive to it, in which case it's like I'm heightened.
That 20th person is going to get it.
And I'm about to blow on them.
Yeah.
So the bucket is full and it's about to be kicked over.
Let's talk about the bucket being full, everybody. All right. So when you find yourself screaming at somebody, have you ever had that happen? Yeah, I know I have. Sorry, Rob. Anyway, I had my moments.
I remember that one.
Yeah, that was a good one. Sorry, buddy. Do love you. Anyway, so bucket gets full, crap flies all over the place, and we're screaming at somebody. What do we need to do in a situation like that? What can we do to de-escalate ourselves in that situation? Because we're kind of in fight mode at that point, I would think.
I would say two things. Number one, if you find yourself in that, what do you know about yourself that's going to help you realize that that's what you're doing? And so go ahead and identify, if possible, what is it that you need to do to get yourself calmed down? Do you need to step away? Do you need to, hey, listen, I need a different opinion here because right now I can't handle this or I can't deal with this right now. Then I think away is going to be productive. So I think that takes a little bit of self-awareness. It takes a little bit of self-knowledge. And that takes time. It takes preparation. And to be as proactive as possible ahead of time so you know that, okay, if I've got 20 things, okay, somebody's got to help me out with this. I cannot hit this next one because I just know I'm getting ready to blow. What do you know is going to help you calm down first? Whether it be distractions, like I need to table this for a few minutes or I need to table this to tomorrow. Is this the best time for you to communicate? No, granted, if you got a safety issue, that's one thing. Yeah. But if it's something else, whether it be 5 minutes or 15 minutes, is it going to matter? Can you wait a little bit for you to start to address it? And I would go through that breathing. I would maybe get outside. Just something to why am I getting so upset? And if you can identify that, that might help you as far as when you actually, because you're right, the confrontation aspect. Confrontation can either have positive outcomes or negative outcomes, but everybody hears the word confrontation and they automatically assume it's going to be bad. It doesn't have to be bad. If you establish that environment where the person feels psychologically safe, like I feel comfortable enough, I can come tell you where I screwed up. Based on how you react, are we going to address the issue and then we're going to fix it and correct it so it doesn't happen again? Or here's the process, something happened that needs to be addressed. That's a lot different than the person that's scared to tell you, hey, I screwed up here because I'm scared how you're going to react. So I think, again, some front loading with how your work environment is set up is also going to help you deal with that situation when you get into it. My students in my lab have seen me recently, because of several other situations going on where I've kind of lost it for a little bit. And I've said something that I did not intend, I didn't mean to say. And I immediately told the student, I said, that was not directed at you. And fortunately, I was able to apologize to the student and they said, I realized that. We discussed it. We know that was not you. And we know it wasn't toward us. That was based on some other situational factors. But also, I felt comfortable that I could go to the person and say, hey, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. Can we talk? Here's what we need to discuss.
Is there something to, like you talk about environmentally, like having kind of a psychologically safe environment, right? Is there something to actually changing your physical environment with that person too that can be helpful? Right?
Exactly. Like if you're my supervisor and I know that you've got a concern for my work performance, and I'm going to, whether it be the job trailer, if I'm going to your office, I'm going to that place. Maybe that's not the best place to have that conversation. Maybe it's somewhere else that's a little bit more neutral. And that way you're at least taking that element of anxiety or apprehension out of it. And so you can have more direct communication. It's like contextual information. If you've got all kinds of distractions going on around you, or if there's other people that are, could possibly feed in or kind of jump on board, for the better or the worse, then that's not the place and time to do it.
Of course.
And so, if possible.
Yeah. I'm just thinking through, I mean, it might be advantageous to say, instead of, hey, come to my office.
Yeah.
Hey, just meet me up at the truck real quick. And like, let's just lean up there and we're just going to talk.
Hey, can we go
get
a cup of coffee?
Yeah, a cup of coffee or even take a walk too.
Yeah.
I'm sure would be another good way of doing that.
Yeah.
I think, making it neutral ground.
Does that come to my office, or we got to talk, or, I think you need to be direct.
Yeah.
You need to be objective, but you need to be mindful that, okay, if I'm bringing you into the domain, then maybe I've already set it up where it appears that I've got all the power. And so let's get a little bit more even ground.
Yeah.
Sounds like preparation and humility go a long way.
I think so. I mean, I think there's a lot of research support that too. Again, the preparation, and we can't prepare for everything, but y'all are experienced. You know what you've been doing for so many years. You know some of the situations are going to kind of lead into it. If you can start to identify ahead of time when possible, great. If not, you've got some tools in your tool belt that you can deal with when you're in the situation. Then, okay, come on, let's step over here. And just me and you. I need to, or like you said, take a walk, get some water, and realizing that we can be wrong.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that, not making the assumption. Don't assume they're a butthead until they give you data they're a butthead, And even then, have some humility and being able to realize that, okay, it's not always about the individual. There's sometimes a situation that can get in the way.
Yeah.
So if I'm by nature somebody that's timid about confrontation, but my job calls for it, what kind of things can help me over the wall?
I mean, there's trying to be assertive and step up for yourself. For some people, it's going to be a lot harder than for others, like you said. And so being able to express yourself, I think, is important. And being able to do so in a way that you're using I statements, and being able to, or if you're talking about somebody else's behavior, you're looking at their behavior and you're not using a you, kind of like a, calling them names or, calling them an idiot or anything else. It's like, address the objective behavior as much as possible and trying to focus on the behavior that needs to change or that led to the situation. Not that you're an idiot, not that, how could you have thought that, and so forth. Also not avoiding that timid person who doesn't want to have that confrontation. The more that they avoid the situation, avoid the confrontation, the easier it's going to be for them to actually do so. And you can get this whole cycle where we think confrontation is bad, so we avoid the confrontation. We avoid it until we can't avoid it anymore. Something blows up, then we confront badly. We have bad feelings, and then we think confrontation is bad. And we go through this cycle almost. And so try not to avoid it. I say practice in baby steps. At least share what you think. Try to come to a point where you're at a point of collaboration, and then try to move forward.
That's a really good thing to think through too, is that the longer you wait to confront, the harder and more dirty it can get.
Yeah.
It's like, why did you wait?
Yeah.
Like, you could tell me something. And I've had this happen like with friends before where, they were doing something and I just didn't talk. I just didn't talk to them. And it actually made it more messy because I just didn't talk. And it would have been such an easy thing to do right then, right there. But again, I just kind of had that bad cycle happen where
and there are other situations where you do need to take a step away. Okay, I cannot respond at this immediate moment. I should not hit send on this email. One technique for email is go ahead and type out your email, but don't put anything in the to field or in the BCC or the CC field. Type it out, let it sit, then come back to it. Read it again, read it out loud.
Yeah.
Or use your text to speech and have it read to you. Then go, okay, should I send this?
Yeah.
So you're right. There's certain things we need to take, I say sooner action on. There's other things that we need to let sit.
Yeah.
Because I know I've crafted an email at times when I should not have and too quickly hit send. And then I was like, ugh. then I had more stuff to deal with afterwards.
Either that or you typed up the really, really spicy email, the one that's just that bites a little bit hard, and then you accidentally hit send on that one before you meant to, because you put the person in the to field.
Exactly.
And then you've really stepped in it then, son.
Or heck, use your word processor, type it in there and never put it in the email and then look at it later.
Yeah. That was something I learned early on, but I think it was more from procrastination than anything. So I would type something up, forget about it, and then I would send it later, but then I would come back to it and say, actually, no, I could have phrased that better. It's amazing what just a little, like a couple hours of distance will do to de-escalate yourself, even in a situation.
What's the same thing we were talking about with the physical distance? You're giving yourself some emotional and some mental distance from the situation. And so you can take action when you're hopefully a little bit calmer or maybe a little clearer mindset. I'm not going to say better mindset, but a clearer mindset. And so in that humility aspect, using one of the big things I think about confrontation is making sure that you are displaying empathy as much as possible, that you are trying to understand the position of the other person. Because it's obvious when we have confrontations and we have conflicts, it's either based on differences of opinion, differences of values, difference of identification of outcomes. And being able to put yourself in the position of the other person and trying to understand their perspective is going to help us in so many different ways, and having that sense of empathy.
Is there, so I hate email, for the record. I'm gonna just start with that.
I got you.
I hate it. Is there anything that suggests like it's harder to get empathy if it is just text? Or something.
Yeah, because you're losing all the nonverbals. Right here while we're sitting, we're making eye contact. We can see each other's body language, whether we're paying attention to it directly or not. But we have all these other cues that we can pay attention to. In a text message, an email, anything that does not have that nonverbal information, then we lose so much. Think about how many times have you sent a text or an email intended it to be a joke or even sarcasm. And granted, some people argue you shouldn't be using any sarcasm, but it's taken in such an offensive manner. Because we don't have either the tone of our voice, we don't have the raising of our eyebrows, our facial expressions, or the fact that makes it, further completes the communication. So, because we lose that. But
that's why we had to have emojis created.
Exactly.
Just literally to come up with these,
come up with some ways. Some ways to try to
we're
convey.
Going backwards now. We're back to hieroglyphics, guys. Seriously. Come on.
One of the major operating systems just released a whole new set.
Oh, yay. Look at that. That's going to fix all of our problems for sure.
You know what I regret?
What?
I kind of regret not keeping some of those gems though, because I'd delete them. I have a habit of deleting them or recrafting them. There's a few out there. I think I wish I would have had the original draft still. Maybe that's an idea, is throw those in a file for when you're 15 years older, you go back and read them.
Hey.
I mean, some of them, talk about getting a little bit fired up.
That was Abraham Lincoln's thing, right? Is that he would, anytime he was frustrated or mad, he would write it out and then you put it in his desk drawer. And he would never send it.
That's what the internet says.
Reddit says it's true, therefore I believe it.
That's what the internet says.
It's on the internet. It's got to be true.
It's got to be true, right? Lee, back me up on this, man. Do some research.
Everybody
and
push
put it
body
in
language is pushed back from the table.
Oh, look at this.
I ain't touching that. Nope.
So many times I have been thrown into a fight or thrown into a bad, twisted confrontation because of an email, because we don't have those little clues, those little, hey, I'm just being a little bit sarcastic here, or I'm, just kind of poking a little fun, no big deal. And then I get up in arms, or they get up in arms, because I don't know if you guys have noticed, I'm a little bit sarcastic, just a little bit.
That can go different directions too. You go sarcasm with the right person,
it can go
and
great.
It builds rapport. And you're like, oh man, this guy's a smart butt like I am. I like it.
Right.
But then you do it with the wrong person. And they do, what is it, the 401 humor not found? And you're like,
404.
Darn it. I am very sorry for my behavior. I should not have done that.
But my favorite one is when you get the, well, actually, and you're like,
oh, shoot.
Dang it. All right. You don't get it, do you? Okay. All right. I was joking. But I've been thrust into so many different, very frustrating conversations as a result of email. And I don't know. I think that's something that I always come back to, I freaking hate email because I do think it starts up so many just difficult situations because we don't have those clues to go off.
And think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, if you're on a job site somewhere and you got a distant, whoever you're communicating with, whether it be somebody that you're working with or it's the client or whatever, heck, sometimes just pick up the daggum phone.
Yeah.
I'm not going to spend time doing a 30-minute email that will take a 5-minute phone call. If there's something, if you multiple points, multiple questions, there's sometimes having a chain of communication can be helpful. But there's other times, just pick up the phone or, hey, we need to have a face-to-face discussion about this.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is important to me. I'm not ignoring your message, but I prefer we talk about this, on the phone or we talk about this in person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think sometimes being able to be aware that that's what we need to do because, it can turn to a rant.
Yeah.
So
it really can turn into a rant really fast.
Yeah.
One thing I'd add to that is have a list. Have the courtesy of building just a short little bulleted list of anybody that you call. Just like, hey, here are the things that I need answers on. Mm-hmm. And that's something that a lot of people don't do too. They just get on the phone and they're like, I forgot. Maybe it was, I was over here on this drawing. I think maybe it was that. Let me check my email. I don't really know. And then they're just rambling. Have that courtesy of just, all right, let me get my thoughts together.
Yeah.
Let's do the phone call. That way it's a 5-minute thing instead of the 30-minute rant.
Exactly.
That I've dealt with PMs that have been that way, and that's exhausting after a while. Or
sometimes
30 minutes
just
every
be
time.
able to recap. Okay, Another thing that we can do, like if we're sitting here talking face to face, and you say something I don't understand. Okay, can you tell me that again? Yeah. Or I can say, all right, what I hear you saying is, how many times have you done that in an email? How many times have you done that in a text message where you've asked for clarification or you've summarized what the person said or what they've tried to communicate? Okay. What I am understanding is A, B, and C. That's a lot I don't know. For me, that's a lot easier to do face-to-face. Or I'm better at doing that face-to-face than I am via email or other forms of communication.
Because it just takes 2 seconds to do most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, email, you take the text and then you don't think to send something. What does you mean? You parse the text and then you kind of interpolate what they meant. You infer, right?
Yeah.
And that inference is where you take the thing that was not snarky at all.
Yeah.
But maybe you had an interaction with this person before. Now all of a sudden it's snarky. They didn't really even mean it that way.
Yeah.
So that's a huge difference. I hadn't thought about that.
Another reason why email sucks. Anyway, freaking hate it, guys.
That rant's been going for years.
I hate it. Was it Cal Newport that put out a book on email?
I think so.
I think it was Cal Newport. Put that one in the show notes too.
I like it.
Join my rant. Join the parade. I freaking hate email, man. It stirs up so much crap. Anyway, I wanted to, I'm going to do my breathing now. All right, we're good.
You're good. 3 times. No, don't do it 3 times. It'll be awkward.
Yeah. No. All right. I want to talk about anxiety for a second too, because I feel like this is a topic that a lot of people, they're not really sure what it is. And there's a little bit of like, I'll raise my hand. It's like I had never experienced any form of anxiety ever. So I thought until I got into my 20s, mid 20s. And then it hit me really, really hard. And it really wore me down. And so anxiety, is there any sort of like description that you could put on that for us and kind of like help us understand what it is and how it works and, just any sort of clarifiers there for anybody that might be struggling with that?
I mean, like when you're younger, it's possible you're having, kind of like anxious reactions to certain things that you, like you said, you don't even realize that you're reacting that way.
Yeah.
I know that when I was like in grammar school or high school, like if something was coming up, like an exam or something like that, I wouldn't feel good in my stomach, upset stomach or something like that. I was having a physiological reaction.
Yeah.
And so that idea, anxiety can come from worry. It can come from just that almost like fear of the unknown or a sense of threat.
Yeah.
That sense of you don't know what's going to happen next. And we can get caught up in that. We can get caught up in a loop, where we're just kind of hyper-focused on those things that if I don't do this, then this is going to happen. You can go down that rabbit trail, but it's the idea that a lot of things that cause us anxiety can do us some type of harm, whether it be physical, emotional, mental, or so forth.
Yeah.
Where anxiety kind of gets out of control is when it's not relevant to exactly what's going on in your life.
Yeah.
And so, like, we can go to the extreme of somebody having a phobia where they're afraid of some item or some situation, and they will change things in their life to constantly avoid that, even if the likelihood of that, them actually coming into contact with that item or that situation is not a high probability.
Yeah.
Versus, the anxiety where you just kind of worry about, maybe it's about safety, maybe it's about tomorrow, finances. But it's that sense of threat, that sense of not knowing what to expect. And we start to have that kind of defensive reaction to it.
Yeah. It's natural to have like an anxious moment. It's like, it's that kind of that fight or flight that comes in, right?
Yeah. I mean, if
it's
it's something like if I'm standing there's a snake next to me that I don't know what kind of snake it is. It's pretty adaptive for me to have some anxiety about that snake, at least for me, because I have no knowledge of snakes.
Yes.
But we can start to develop anxiety to things that don't have that same threat level. And we can start to be anxious about all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And it is something that if somebody starts to experience anxiety and don't have effective coping strategies, then it can, be all-encompassing for them, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It can either be specific or it can be kind of generalized.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to identify what's the source, what is it that you're anxious about? It depends on the approach. Where you're looking at the thought process that somebody's going through, or maybe it was something that you learned to be anxious about at some point. Again, multiple theories about how it can come about and also how you would treat it. But trying to identify, okay, what purpose is this anxiety having for me at this immediate time? And if it's not adaptive, it's not something that's productive for me, then okay, where's this coming from and what can I do about it?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That was something that the avoidance thing is really where I started to realize that in myself. Sorry, I'm going to kind of go in a little bit deep here, but music, you know this about me. I like to play over at church and everything. That was something whenever I was going through a period of deep anxiety, I was avoiding completely. I was like, oh, if I go and I stand up on stage, I have this thought of going and standing up on stage, I know I'm going to panic. I'm going to freak out, so I'm just going to avoid it. But the funniest thing is like, that's something that like gives me life. Like that's a part of me that I really like, I like playing music. It's something that I enjoy, but then there's this negative side of it where I got used to falling into this kind of anxious cycle. And I would just psych myself out completely anytime I got asked to get up on stage, and I'm like, I'm panicking to the point I decided I'm done. I'm out. And I didn't play for like 4 years, I think.
Well, if you look at kind of like a behavioral aspect, what you're describing is negative reinforcement. Okay. I can reinforce a behavior. That means I'm going to make it more likely to occur.
Yeah.
So I can add something that you like, something appetitive, something appealing to you to make it more likely to occur again.
Yeah.
Or if I've got a situation that I'm trying to avoid that I don't like, by not engaging with it, I've actually reinforced that avoidance behavior. So it's going to make it easier for me to avoid that again in the future. So, we can sometimes do that and don't mean to, and we make it easier to actually avoid that situation. No, because it's been reinforced to avoid it.
So much of the advice that I'm hearing, it feels like just getting outside or above the situation, be able to peer into it, is a key ingredient to understanding, to coping, to dealing with things better. That's kind of the advice for confrontation, right? That first is like, let's look at the issue first instead of getting all trapped in ourselves. Same with anxiety. So I don't know, maybe if there's a call to action, like you said, it's easy to say and very hard to do. But if we can get above it, and remember, these things are going to come in our lives. Like we are going to deal with this. It's a very relevant topic. We deal with it every day. But to be able to get above it and just look at it for what it is, examine the situation, and then try to think about what we're going to do with it. It's not going to kill you.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah.
We hope.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, again, you're talking about a safety situation, but yeah, you're right. You know, when you talk about thoughts and emotions, you're going to talk about, you know, somebody being dry when they're really in their thought process, when they're really in the head. You can talk about somebody being the emotions it can be wet. I had a supervisor one time in one of my training programs. Again, this is just all personal opinion, but he said, if it's wet, dry it. If it's dry, wet it. And so, if I'm getting really emotionally involved in the situation, then maybe I need to step out and think about what's going on. But if I'm so distanced from the situation that I can't understand your perspective, I need to try to connect. Maybe what is the emotion you're feeling right now? What is it that you're feeling? What is it that you're bringing in? And try to understand your point of view.
Yeah.
And so, I think you've nailed it. I mean, and again, it's so much easier to say than to do. And I mess up all the time. And I've at least heard a thing or two over the years, so.
But we're practicing right.
Yeah.
We're trying to practice.
We're looking
we're
looking for positive practice. Yeah. Outcomes that lead to something more positive and healthy.
Yeah.
So.
Nobody sitting around this table is immune from all of these things for sure. So I think we're all speaking from experience here. And if anything, it's just a healthy reminder of like, hey, you're not alone in this. There's just everybody struggles with it. It's part of the human experience.
Yeah, exactly.
It's part of life.
And that's where I think being able to reach out to colleagues, reach out to your supervisor, reach out to friends. You don't have to identify who it is that you've got the situation with. You can talk in hypotheticals. You can say, okay, I need to bounce something off of you. I got something that's just rubbing me the wrong way. I need another opinion.
Yeah.
And I think stepping back at times when we can do so, or at least step to the side, so we can look at the other person's perspective, or at least other aspects of the situation, can sometimes help us make better decisions or healthier decisions.
Yeah.
So
having extra people around you to bounce things off of, like I found that in building a business, it's like it has been helpful for me to have people where I could, hey, I'm in my head about this. Like, can you just help me work through this? And just talking through something. So finding your key people, finding one or two people that you can confide in and really talk through that stuff with. Eddie's definitely not one of them, for sure. I never do that.
You're on your own.
Yeah. There's something unhealthy about what I just said. Anyway. Don't you analyze me. No.
I'm drinking my coffee. Drinking my coffee.
All right. So we've kind of come down to our megaphone. Our megaphone is if we gave you a megaphone and we said, hey, speak to the industry for 60 seconds, what would be something that you would want to say?
You don't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
You can ask for help.
Yeah.
You can learn new things. You can try different approaches. Just because you've done it one way doesn't mean that has to be the way that you do it forever.
Yeah.
And more importantly, despite all of your experiences and despite everything you've done, can you imagine that somebody's experience might be different than yours?
Mm-hmm.
And what can we learn from somebody else?
Yeah.
So
it's good stuff, man. That's really good stuff. Dude, thank you so much for coming and joining us.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
Listen, next time, we're talking ADHD.
Okay.
All right. I got to dig into that with you because I just selfishly want to know.
Sure.
Can we hook me up to some...
I was thinking, maybe we could actually prompt some data collection there. So.
I'll be a weird one. All right. Go build something awesome.